Well, so far in this section, we've looked at different ways of entering data, copying data, pasting data, cutting data, and deleting data. These are quite a few activities that we're performing within our workbook. And it's possible with all this activity that at some point we'll make a mistake. So what can we do if we do make a mistake within the workbook environment? Let's say, for example, I've accidentally deleted this information here. I then decide, oh no, I do need that product information, I need to get it back. Well, like in various other Microsoft packages, we have an undo button. The undo button by default is found in the quick access toolbar. You will find the undo button and the redo button. Let's first of all look at the undo button. I'll just click undo, and my last action is undone. So the deletion of the items sold column is reversed. Effectively, this is not adding the data back in, it is simply reversing the action of deleting. It's an important distinction, so let's keep that in mind. Okay, let's say I've done more than one mistake. Let's say I've deleted first the items sold, and then I changed this region to region global. But I shouldn't have done those two things. Those are two actions that I've done, and I didn't want to do either of them. I shouldn't have done both of them. So what I can do is come over to my undo button, and I can click it once to undo the first action. You can see that the tooltip is already displaying the action that will be undone, and that is the typing of the region global. So let's undo that first action. That's reversed, and now let's undo the original action, which was the deleting of the items sold. Okay, so that's pretty nifty, and in fact Excel will normally record pretty much every activity that you've done from the point that you open a workbook. So you've got quite a large facility to reverse back through your actions. Let's look at another bit of functionality within the undo button. Let's say again I've made various deletions column by column. 3 separate actions to delete 3 separate columns. Now, as we've just looked at, I can click the undo button 3 times to undo those 3 actions. Or I can click into the drop-down menu within undo. I can recognize the 3 actions that I've just done. They were all clearing actions. So those are the 3 I want, and I can choose to undo all 3 in one block. All 3 actions are reversed. This is a very handy feature. Now let's understand the redo actions. Redo is the polar opposite of undo. Now we do have a redo button in Word, for example, but the functionality of redo in Word is a little bit different. In Word, if I type a sentence and then hit redo, the sentence will be retyped over and over and simply added to the page. Redo within Excel doesn't have the same functionality. Redo can only redo what has been undone. For example, we've had a save workbook action which has deleted all the redos. I'm going to first start some actions. Let's delete these columns again. Delete one, delete another, delete another. I can now undo these actions, and then I can redo these actions with the redo button. But you'll notice now that I've redone the last 3 actions that were undone, I can no longer redo. There's no more things to redo in the stack of undoing and redoing. Okay, let's get my data back by using the undo again. Now, while we're talking about undo and redo, it's worth talking about another couple of features. Firstly, let's talk about using the shortcuts for undo and redo. First, let's just generate some fresh actions again. I'm going to delete these 3 columns. So instead of using the undo button, I can use Ctrl Z. And each time I press Ctrl Z, one of the actions is undone. Similarly, now if I want to redo those actions, I have a shortcut equivalent, which is Ctrl Y. I'm just going to get my data back again with Ctrl Z. There's one other area of the undo-redo functionality in Excel which is worth explaining, and that is that undo-redo works at application level, or at workbook level. It's kind of above file level. So at any given point, I could have more than one workbook open in my Excel environment. Just to demonstrate this, let's create a new file. I now have my original file and this new file called Book 3. But all of these books are within the application of Microsoft Excel. So let's try some experiments with undo and redo within multiple workbooks. First of all, I'll type test in this workbook. I'll come over to my other workbook and type test 2. I'll come back to my book 3 workbook and type test 3. Back to my original class book and type test 4. Now, when I press the undo key now, perhaps the sequence of events will seem logical to you. But you can believe me that if you've been working on a worksheet for a long period of time, you may forget that you've changed workbook and performed actions on different sheets. Anyway, let's just look at what happens. I'll click undo and the first, test 4, is deleted. I'll click undo again and the test 3 that was typed into this workbook has been deleted. If I press undo again, we'll come back to my original file and delete another word there. Effectively, the undo will flip between workbooks. It doesn't care about what workbook you're in, it will only care about what actions have been performed at application level. If we look at the list here, these actions are anything that has been performed in Excel since we opened Excel. Now, most of the time this functionality is not problematic, but it's worth understanding when you hit the undo button and your screen starts flickering between workbooks. Don't worry, it's not a bug, it's just Excel undoing actions on different sheets. Now, let's say you did want to undo the actions that you'd performed on this worksheet without affecting the other workbook. One way to get around it is to go to your other workbook and you could potentially save it and close it. I'm not interested in this information, so I'm simply just going to close this file. I've still got my test 2 and test 4. And if I look into my undo actions, I can see that test 3 and test 1 are now no longer in view. Simply because that workbook is now closed, I cannot affect those actions. So let's undo those. As expected, it has simply undone those two actions without affecting any other workbooks. That concludes our section on undoing and redoing.